On July 20th, two tankers were hit off Kumzar, near the northern tip of Oman. One was left drifting and on fire, and the crew went over the side and were picked up by a tug. Neither ship was carrying anything unusual. Both were doing what tankers have done here every day for 50 years. The ships were ordinary. What had changed was the water they were sailing through. The strait has been closed on and off since the 4th of March, nearly 5 months. Sweeping the mines was never the hard part. What keeps it closed is what a crossing now costs, and the fact that the routes built to replace it can't carry what it used to carry. Those two things are the whole story. Everything else is detail. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran along the north shore, Oman and the United Arab Emirates on the south. Behind it, the Persian Gulf and the largest concentration of exportable oil on Earth. Before it closed, about 20 million barrels of oil moved through here every day, roughly a fifth of what the world burns, and about a quarter of all the oil that travels by sea. At its narrowest, the strait is about 21 miles across. That sounds like a lot of water, and it isn't. Ships this size run in marked lanes a fraction of that width, inbound on one side and outbound on the other. The traffic is predictable, concentrated, and never out of sight of the Iranian coast. Iran's navy was never built to win a battle in open water. It was built for this stretch of coast. Mines are at the center of that. Iran is believed to hold thousands of them, and only a handful have to be in the water to matter. Some are designed to let ships pass, to ignore the first vessel over them, and the second, and detonate under a later one. That's why a strait can be swept for mines, declared clear, and still not be safe. The absence of an explosion proves nothing. Around the mines sit hundreds of small, fast boats, shallow enough to work close to shore and hard to see on radar. They carry enough to threaten a tanker. Behind them, anti-ship missiles and drones. Iran doesn't need to beat the U.S. Navy. It only needs to make the route too dangerous to trust. You don't have to sink ships to close a waterway. You just have to make the people who insure them say no. Before the war, insuring a tanker for a trip through Hormuz cost about 0.25% of the value of the ship. By July of 2026, the same crossing cost between 3 and 10%. For a tanker worth $100 million, that's the difference between roughly $250,000 and as much as $10 million for a single crossing. Same ship, same route, same cargo. What changed was the math. At that price, most owners simply stop, not because the strait became impossible, because it stopped being worth it. On February 28th, the United States and Israel began an air campaign against Iran. Iran's supreme leader was killed in the opening days. 4 days later, the Revolutionary Guard declared the strait closed. Mines went into the water. Merchant ships were boarded and some were attacked. Traffic didn't stop all at once, it thinned. Owners with cargo already committed kept sailing for a while. Then the insurance market caught up with the news and they stopped too. Oil had been trading around $60 a barrel at the start of the year. By March, it went above 114. People feel that kind of number late, and then all at once. American drivers paid an average of more than $4.20 a gallon through the spring. Nobody in that line at the pump was thinking about Kumzar or about a mine that counts ships before it detonates. They were just paying more. The countries hit hardest were not the ones you hear about most. China, India, Japan, and South Korea together take about 75% of the oil that moves through the strait and about 59% of the gas. Japan is the extreme case. Somewhere between 80 and 90% of its oil comes out of the Gulf. The reaction was fast and defensive. Thailand suspended fuel exports on the 1st of March, and China ordered its largest refineries to stop exporting diesel and gasoline 4 days later. South Korea's gas utility watched Qatari cargoes sit behind the blockade while it did the math on its own power grid. A chokepoint doesn't just raise prices. It makes every country that depends on it start hoarding, which raises prices again. In April, there was a ceasefire, brokered through Pakistan, and Iran agreed to let ships pass for 2 weeks. Traffic stayed thin anyway. A 2-week guarantee isn't long enough to plan a voyage around. In June, the two sides signed a memorandum. The war was over, the strait was open, and the market believed it. By the 1st of July, oil was back under $70. That lasted about 3 weeks. In the 3rd week of July, transits collapsed again. Ships not tied to Iran fell from 108 crossings in a week to 25. Overall traffic was down about 90% from a year earlier. Then came the 2 tankers off Kumzar. The ceasefire is no longer in force. American strikes have resumed, and Iran has added a demand that wasn't there before. It wants a new set of rules for the strait, and it wants to charge ships to use it. Washington says tolls are not something it will agree to. None of this was unforeseen. The Gulf states have understood the problem with Hormuz for decades, and they built around it. Saudi Arabia runs a pipeline roughly 750 miles from the oil fields in the east to the port of Yanbu, on the Red Sea. It exists to move crude to a coastline that isn't behind the strait. The Emirates built a shorter one, about 250 miles out to Fujairah, on the ocean side of the chokepoint. Both are working and both are moving oil right now. They are still not enough. This is where the numbers start to bite. The Saudi line is rated at 5 million barrels a day. The company has said it can push 7, though that has never been tested over a sustained period. Either way, about 2 million barrels a day was already committed before the crisis. That leaves 3 to 5 million a day of real spare room. The Emirati line adds roughly 1.5 to 1.8 million. Iran has a pipeline of its own to the Gulf of Oman, at Jask, rated around 1 million barrels a day. It is effectively not running. Add up what can realistically move, 5 to 7 million barrels a day. The strait was carrying 20. That is the oil. The gas is worse. About 93% of Qatar's liquefied natural gas leaves through the Strait of Hormuz, and 96% of the Emirates. Together, close to 1/5 of the entire global trade in LNG. There is no pipeline for it. There is no alternate route. The plants that chill the gas into liquid sit behind the strait, and the only way that gas reaches a buyer is on a ship, through that water. Oil has a partial escape, gas has none at all. This water has been dangerous before. Between 1984 and 1988, Iran and Iraq both went after shipping in the Gulf. More than 400 vessels were attacked. By the end of 1987, the strikes had killed 116 merchant sailors, with dozens more missing. The United States ended up putting 11 Kuwaiti tankers under its own flag and escorting them through. It was the largest convoy operation the Navy had run since the Second World War, and it went on for more than a year. Through 4 years of that, the oil kept moving. The strait never closed. Ships were being hit and the traffic continued anyway, because the danger could be measured and priced and insured against. This time it didn't hold. Which brings it back to the mines. Clearing them is slow, physical work, done by ships most navies barely have anymore. The United States has 4 dedicated minesweepers of the older class left, home-ported in Japan. The rest of the job falls to drones, helicopters, and vessels doing work they weren't designed for. Some people who have run these operations say the Navy is not ready for this one. And a clean sweep doesn't settle it because of how those mines are built. Let 3 ships pass and take the 4th, and no amount of clear water proves anything. The route reopens when owners and underwriters believe it's open. Belief is slower than minesweeping. Every one of those escape routes was built for a short emergency, a few weeks of disruption, then back to normal. That assumption is now 5 months old.